Assalamualaikum, my name is Nureen Maisarah Binti Salimee. I'm from JBE 2492. In this video, I will present Chapter 6, which is Mathematics of Finance, and also Chapter 7, Working Capital Management. So, let's start with Chapter 6, Mathematics of Finance. There are two main points that need to be focused on this chapter, which is a time value of money and also present value and future value. The value of money today is not gonna be the same in the future, which means 1 ringgit today is worth than 1 ringgit later. That is the basic concept of this chapter. There are two types of time value of money, which is future value and present value. First, future value. Future value is the amount, a sum that will grow to in a certain number of years when compounded at a specific rate. Or in other words, future value is the cash value of an investment at some time in the future. Higher risk and longer period affecting the future value even more. Future value can be calculated by using formula, table, financial calculator, application, or spreadsheet. The whole process of calculating the future value is known as compounding. Next, move on to present value. Present value is the current value of future cash flows discounted at the appropriate discount rate, or in other words, present value reflects the current value of a future payment or receipt. It is the opposite of future value. Present value can be computed using formula, table, financial calculator, application, or spreadsheet. Next, move on to annuities. Annuities involve cash flow within the same amount or value paid or received in each period, occurring over a specific period. Example financial transaction is mortgage, insurance, and loans. Types of annuity has been divided into two, which is ordinary annuity and annuity 2. Ordinary annuity is the cash flow that occur at the end of the period, such as end of year. And annuity 2 is ordinary annuity in which all payments have been shifted forward by one time period. It also known as the cash flow that occur at the beginning of the period. Last but not least, for this chapter is about perpetuity. Perpetuity is an annuity that continues forever. Let's move on to Chapter 7, Working Capital Management. In this chapter, we will focus on definition, policies of working capital management, and approaches to working capital management. Let's look at the definition. Working capital management involves day-to-day decisions regarding investment in current assets and how the assets are to be financed. The level of each current asset and how current assets are financed that can be identified in the working capital policy. Working capital policy is about managing working capital, involve risk-return trade-off, amount of current asset, and source of financing. Working capital will affect the firm's profitability and liquidity. If the current asset increase, the profitability will be lower, but the liquidity will be higher. Different from current liabilities, if it's increased, the profitability will be higher and liquidity will be much lower. Policies of working capital management can be divided into three, which is relaxed policy, restricted policy, and moderate policy. For relaxed policy is also known as low-risk policy. Firm will maintain large amount of current assets coupled with liberal credit policy, high liquidity, and potentially low return from investment due to low productivity of current assets relative to fixed assets. Next, restricted policy, also known as high-risk policy. Firm will maintain low amount of current asset coupled with stringent credit policy, invest in fixed asset, which result to high profitability but low liquidity. Moderate policy is a mixture of relaxed and restricted policy, which is moderate risk and return. Maintain the liquidity and invest in productive assets, and at the same time hold sufficient current assets. Next, let's look at the approaches to working capital management or three financing strategies. The first one is hedging approach. It matches the maturity of the asset with the maturity of the financing. The firm will use temporary financing to finance temporary current assets and permanent financing to finance permanent assets. This approach results in moderate risk with moderate returns. Next, aggressive approach. Finance all fixed assets with long-term financing, but only a portion of the permanent current assets will be financed by long-term financing. The remaining permanent and the fluctuating current asset will be financed with short-term borrowing. Last but not least, conservative approach. It is the lowest risk approach. The firm uses long-term financing for the majority of its assets. The firm supports fixed permanent current and average temporary current assets with long-term financing. Among these three approaches, the aggressive approach promises the highest return but carries the greatest risk. Meanwhile, the conservative approach has the least risk but also the lowest expected return, and the hedging approach results in moderate risk with moderate returns. That's all from me, Nureen Maisarah Binti Salimee. Thank you. Thank you for watching.